Hi there, everybody. I'm Tom Holland.
And I'm Jonathan Stark.
And we're both on $2 Late Fees, a great podcast that's been wonderful. Please listen to it.
You're going to have a lot of fun.
Hopefully.
I'm going to do the cliche thing and say, it's an honor to have the director of Fright Night, writer and director of Fright Night, Tom Holland here, and Billy Cole himself, Jonathan Stark on $2 Late Fee. Guys, it's an honor to have you on the show.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
We before we went on, I just mentioned that we had Jack Daniel on last week to talk about the narration that he did for the Fright Night 40th anniversary table read podcast. I've said that about
amazing job. He did an amazing job. He really was fantastic.
Amazing job. And right before we hit record too, Jonathan, you were saying that you and Tom get together fairly regularly, right? For breakfast or lunch?
Every couple of weeks with a bunch of horror guys and writers and directors. And it's really it's a lot of fun. And we have breakfast.
That's amazing.
The knowledge about the trivia about horror is astounding.
Yeah.
So do you sit around and just swap stories, or is it more just like, let's talk about the real horror in the world, current politics?
Both, I think, right, Tom? Both, kind of.
Well, kind of, but a lot about horror and about the genre within the business, and it's like given what's going on, it's like the most exciting genre there is in movies now.
Totally agree. Actually, I said this on the last week's episode. Fright Night is my comfort film. It has been since I was a kid. It was something that I would put on a regular basis, whether I was studying and needed something distracting, something that wouldn't distract me, that was comforting in the background. It was always Fright Night. Fright Night and the Warriors was my other one from 1979.
I love the Warriors.
Right? What's not to love?
Walter Hill.
I don't know if you heard about our screening at the New Bev Cinema. That was pretty great, I have to say. And I had only seen the movie. I'd never saw it on the big screen before. I've only seen it 2 times, and the only times I saw were on televisions. So I got to see it in an actual movie theater with the screening, but not just with the screening. It was with all the fans. And Tom, wasn't that amazing?
The whole thing was amazing. From Friday night through the recording on Saturday. Yes. Friday night, it was the love from the fans, but the entire cast was there, except I think for Chris Sarandon, who was still flying in. It's just you felt the love for the movie. It was just could bring tears to my eyes, really.
What a great way to kind of kick off the weekend that you started recording the podcast, because with that screening. For those that don't know, New Beverly Cinema here in Los Angeles is I think it's now owned by Quentin Tarantino, but it's a landmark. It's been around forever. Great screenings. I would go to Grindhouse nights every Tuesday and show Eric Caden from Hollywood Book and Poster Company would do like these great revival things. And it was fantastic. And I was kicking myself that I did not attend that screening. I think Julie Carmen even came, right, from Fright Night Part 2.
Yeah, she did.
What was really great about it was that they had a cartoon feature before. Okay. You know what he always does. And then all the things are like coming, here's the main feature. And then it wasn't a perfect print either. And there were splices in it. There were cuts in it. I can remember there was a scene where Evil Ed, where the scene in the alley when Charlie and it thinks Evil might be attacked by Jerry. And he's going, no. And he goes, come here. I want to give you a hickey. And he says, I've been bit. The hickey part was cut out.
Oh.
So you missed the whole joke, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter.
Oh, yeah. Oh, get this Sunday. My son and I are going down to the New Beverly because they're having a matinee at 2:00 with a 35 mil print of Cloak and Dagger.
Right. By the way, Dustin's here, everybody.
Hi guys, my apologies.
All right.
All good.
Dustin.
Some days the firmware just needs to be updated in the middle of your session, and
I know. This Tuesday, tomorrow, they're going to drop the third act of the Fright Night table read reading, the original cast reading with Mark Hamill and everybody.
No, they're fantastic. Congratulations to both of you. The fact that all the awesome, fuck ups, if you will, are left in, it's fantastic. And one of my favorite things about this latest episode is like, just like how everybody in the room, you can feel the energy. Everyone's enjoying themselves. And then they're like, all right, lunch is near the charcuterie board. It's like,
well, it was also sponsored by a brand that makes scotch.
Right.
And we had a shot of scotch at lunch, and it was delicious. But oh my gosh! And think about the cast. This is 40 years, and the cast they all love each other. I mean, it's just
we get together. We get together, and it's just like we're laughing the entire time, just like we were in the movie. We were always laughing, and then we'd have to stop when Tom would say, "Come on, you guys, we got to shoot this. Stop laughing." We'd have to then be evil. But Chris and Bill and Amanda are so funny, and Steven is just a wonderful, wonderful guy. So we're actually the entire cast with Dorothy are going to be at Scarefest weekend in October.
Oh, cool.
And Tom too. So it's going to be a great party for us.
Well, I have to say, first of all, Tom, you had mentioned that Cloak and Dagger, this will be airing the weekend that Cloak and Dagger is playing at New Beverly. And Jonathan, we just had Tom on last month to talk about Cloak and Dagger, because Cloak and Dagger is another favorite of ours as well. And to see that on a 35 millimeter print on screen, I'm sure will be fantastic. Hopefully we can go. And then Dustin, you brought up the recording, and Jonathan, you mentioned it's in episode 1. You're like, you flubbed a line, and you're like, I only have 13 lines in this thing, and I already am screwing up, And
I know that's what the funny thing about Jack Daniel is. He was letter perfect, and he had like 1,000 lines. I had 13, and I screwed up one.
So what I love about that is, we live in a world of revisions and remakes and blah 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 blah. That's a whole other podcast where we could, rant about that. This is a different experience. This is the experience I think that everybody who loves Fright Night will appreciate and love, and people who are new to it will go, oh, this is going to make me want to watch the original movie from 1985. Like, it's a really beautiful companion piece to what I consider one of the greatest horror films of the 80s, and in my opinion, of all time.
Thank you.
Nice to say.
And by the way, your birthday is in a couple days, so happy birthday early.
Oh, thank you very much.
Happy birthday early.
Zach, it's astounding that the movie has only grown in popularity over 40 years. I mean, when I made this, when we made it, it never occurred to me that anybody would be talking about it a year or two after the release. I mean, it's just thank you. But it's just amazing.
If only you would have known, because you could have taken a lot of props and made a lot of money. I mean,
oh gosh!
Yes. That one picture of Amy that he uncovers that looks like that's how much that sell for, Tom?
$27,000, and I tried to buy it, and I went up. I stayed in it up to $12,000, and then I dropped out, and I couldn't believe it. And I was the one who told them to make it. We were shooting the movie.
I only kept the skull as a memento. I didn't know that I'd ever, but I didn't sell it. I gave it to Tom because he's kind of the keeper of the props. But Roddy's vampire killer kit, we're still looking for, but we don't know what happened to it.
We don't know what happened. Yeah.
So Jonathan, I had interviewed you years ago for my other show, Podcasting After Dark, and we talked about House 2 and how you would occasionally go on eBay to find props and pieces from House 2, because you have a collection of some of the like creatures, right?
I have a few things, but I'm not really a collector. I can't keep any more stuff. My wife's like, no, you get the garage full, you got to get rid of it. So I don't keep much stuff, but every once in a while, if I see something, I'll send the link to Ari Gross for him to see like a part of the Caterpuppy or something.
Yeah, right.
I've collected everything Fright Night that I can.
Do you have the comic books, Tom, from Now Comics?
I have the comic books, but I have the Bat, and I have Evil Ed making the werewolf transition.
Come on.
I've got it under a huge plastic dome, and the Bat I have up and lit from beneath and on top, so you see the yellow eyes. And when the wings are spread out, it's 5.5 feet long. You know, and I mean, so it's just been. So I've done that. I've got the werewolf arm that Evil Ed raises. Jonathan was kind enough to give me the skull.
Yeah.
So you know, I mean, it's just so I've got my wife for a long time forbade me to do it. She said this is a house, not a horror museum. But I got it strung down the hallway pretty much.
You know, but what's even more impressive to me is the 2 screen use Chuckies you've got there. Those are pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say too. Wait, when you say skull, are we talking about Billy Cole's skull from?
Yeah.
From
Yes.
after the slime?
When I was done that day, I said, "Hey, can I have that?" And the guy goes, "Oh, sure, take it." So I just thought, and I actually had it in the house, and my wife again is like, "No, that's too creepy. You can't have that here."
Come
so
on.
it's that it was in the garage for like 20 years, and I finally Tom kept saying, "Where is it? Bring it!" And I finally went through in the garage and found it and gave it to him.
Yeah, and I've got it on a shelf, you know, in the hallway, because people come over to my house and they want to see the collection, you know. So you know, I finally won out over my wife a little bit.
What is it about wives always being the one to compromise when it comes to guys' stuff? Like that's a
My
thing,
wife's
right?
not a horror fan. She's not a horror fan. In fact, she watched Fright Night, but when she went to the movie theater and I said, how about when I melted? She said, no, I turned away, I closed my eyes.
Oh,
She doesn't like, and she doesn't like any scary movies. So
wow.
yeah,
Wow.
but she doesn't get it.
Well, you know, there was like a running joke in our house of you know, I have like a man wall, right, of the things that, you know, that I have collector items and stuff like that. And every now and then I'll give Dustin something like, hey, Dustin, I got you this thing from Police Academy because I know you love Police Academy. So, but Dustin's one. If he and I lived together, he'd be the one compromising for me, I believe.
I mean, where is it's all under that futon behind you, right?
Yeah, there's a
it's just
yeah,
like pile
that's
of
where all
stuff
my
under
movies
there.
are. You just
That's
lift the
where all
mattress
your-
up and they're all there.
There's a 5-foot replica of a vampire as
Pants
well.
and shoes from my pants.
You have a
and shoes.
5-foot replica of a
And shirt.
vampire?
It's under his futon, just jammed under there.
I don't.
Oh
I
my
don't.
God.
But I
You
will say,
you do somewhere, right? Where's all your big stuff? Where do you keep all your big stuff?
in my son's room. My son has
Right.
compromised because he loves.
Yeah, Tom, where do you keep all your money? Let us know. Say it
Oh,
online.
yeah.
And I will
David,
say,
David-
I will say, Tom. So my son, who's now 10, has been listening to the podcast and loves it. He's been waiting. This morning he asked me when's episode 2 out, and I said it's already out. He goes, "Can we listen to it on the way to camp?" And we played a little bit of it in the car. He loves it. So again, I think you're you know, getting a new audience because so many people listen to podcasts. Kids love to listen to stories, right? And this is a great way to introduce them to it.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to figure out what's going on with the popular culture, but podcasts are growing 6% a year. Does anybody read anymore?
No.
Yes.
I mean, you know, it's like you know, it all changes and it keeps changing. What happened with Fright Night was Fright Night became the way for parents to introduce their kids to horror.
Right.
I mean, you know, when Fright Night came out, believe it or not, it was an R rating. Now it would be like a PG. And I mean, they show it to their grandchildren, older people. And so it's become multi-generational, which is why, you know, Jonathan and everybody else in the cast is still invited all the time to horror cons because it's so embedded now in the horror culture, and it's something that everybody can enjoy.
I have a horror con on. I had to step in for Dorothy because she couldn't make it. So it's in Nashua, New Hampshire, I think, and it's called Monster Expo. I don't know anything about it.
Oh, when is that?
Monster Expo. It's in New Hampshire, Nashua, New Hampshire.
When though?
Actually, I think it's this coming coming Saturday and Sunday.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. So this airs Sunday. We can certainly.
Well,
Who knows?
I'll be there. Billy Ragsdale will be there, Amanda and Steven. So,
Okay,
I think
amazing.
the only one that's missing is Chris Sarandon,
yeah,
who's at another one. He committed himself.
he does a lot. He does a
Yeah,
lot.
and well, it's amazing what's happened. I just got invited to Walmart for I think for Halloween. It's just this amazing thing called the Crystal Bridge Museum of American Art in Bentonville, Arkansas.
Oh,
And yeah, I mean, and they invited me for Child's Play for Halloween. I can't keep up, you know. I mean, I'm trying to write, believe it or not. But I mean, it seems to me that somehow, I don't know, I'm being probably prejudiced, but Hollywood is only doing sequels,
yeah,
or remakes,
right.
and it's as though the horror audience is having to find other ways to entertain themselves, even though horror in movies is still the most creatively alive of any of the genres.
Yep. Oh, your devil dog just walked in too, by the way. So.
Yeah. I mean, my 100-pound black German Shepherd. Yeah.
I have to say really quickly, I have a question for you, Jonathan, as far as doing this podcast, this 40th anniversary table read podcast that's out now. Everybody there's links in our show notes and all that stuff. There are certain moments, certain lines that are delivered in this film that sound exactly the same way with the same energy from the original. Sometimes there's a new twist, right? Sometimes
I tried to do that, but
so when you were reading the script, did you feel like, did it take you back to 1984 or whenever you made the movie?
No. I mean, what takes, I don't go back to the movie that much because I have the cast around me, and that's, and Tom, and that's what really made the movie for me, is the cast and having Tom direct us and the movie itself. One time a while back, we found the tapes that Roddy McDowall made.
Yeah.
He had a big one. This was 1984. He had one of those big cameras, on his shoulder, and the tape deck, and we knew he had it, but we never found it. I found this guy online who had taken care of Roddy his last 2 years of his life. So I found him on Facebook. I got a hold of him, and he said, "Oh yeah, there's a bunch of tapes out there in the garage." And I said, "Well, could you take a look and see, is there anything might say Fright Night or anything like that?" And called me about a month later, said, "Yeah, I got into it." And he said there was a Fright Night tape, and I digitized it, and I'm going to put it on Vimeo just for you guys. You can't give it, you can't let anybody else see it, because I think he's doing a documentary about Roddy.
Okay.
And so we watched it, and it was pretty cool. It was the day that the whole cast and crew were there, and we were taking pictures we did pictures. Remember that, Tom, of the whole cast and crew on the stairs and everything?
On the stairs, yep.
And Roddy was there. And the thing with Roddy, though, is the camera was like this. He wasn't very good at it. And it was like 5 minutes. He had the lens cap on.
Oh, so, no.
It wasn't anything that revealing, but it was still cool to see. He was outside with the two at Culver stage and interviewing everybody and stuff. So it was kind of fun.
That's so cool. Wow. That's that's the thing about Roddy McDowall playing, Peter Vincent in Fright Night. I compared it to Gene Wilder playing Willy Wonka in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, or Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory. There will be no other version of that performance. You can do it again, but it will be a different vibe. So bringing Mark Hamill in, Tom, as Peter Vincent, I had just heard his voice as Skeletor in the new Masters of the Universe cartoon on Netflix, which is wonderful, by the way. And he does an amazing version of Skeletor. And so hearing Mark Hamill with this gravitas, but also humility and being pathetic at times as Peter Vincent when he's, so down on himself. Can you talk a little bit about bringing Mark Hamill into this project and how that all came to be?
I reached out to him because he'd done Chucky's voice in the remake of Child's Play, which I wrote and directed, and I thought he did a terrific job.
Yeah,
and I was trying to figure out who could replace Rody that could also move you. And I got hold of Pantera's Sarah, if you know who she is. She somehow has become she's a lovely woman, but she's become the celebrity contact in Hollywood.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to reach a celebrity, Pantera's the way to go. And she put me in touch with Mark. And in our discussion, it turned out that Mark had made a movie with Rody in like a British movie in the UK, like 1991 or something like that. And they'd had an adjoining dressing room and spent a lot of time together. And Rody was a walking, living oral history of Hollywood.
Wow.
Wow.
I mean, he knew Rody would go out to the motion picture home and visit with silent movie stars
Oh, cool.
that nobody remembered anymore except him. And he was just in love with the history. He would tell me about it. And one of the most amazing experiences I ever had, the last day that MGM was in existence, Rody took me to the MGM lot. This is as Sony was buying it. And it was the day they walked the MGM Lion out of the Thalberg gates. And he walked me around and he told me what movies have been shot on what sound stages. He pointed out the dressing rooms and what stars had them and who were doing what assignations in what dressing rooms during their lunch break. And then we went down and we walked underneath the MGM then, and I don't know about now, but they had all these ducts underground that you could walk in for all the piping.
Okay.
And they kept, believe it or not, it's insane, but they kept their nitrate prints down there because it was sort of, it's a fire, there's extreme fire hazard. And, it was just, and then we went to the MGM library, and they were, shows how slow I am. They were throwing away all these stills of all the movie stars from Hollywood's, golden age.
Wow.
And the librarian was weeping in the library because they were throwing out this collection of art and costumes and architecture that they used to design sets for period movies. And we watched them walk the lion out the Thalberg gate, and it was very moving, but at the same time, it was incredible. And Rody had been like that with Mark Hamill when they had talked, when they'd shared a dressing room in Great Britain, and he had picked up Roddy's mid-Atlantic English accent.
Mm.
And he was able to get Mark was able to get Roddy's speech pattern. And Mark also did something else. I twice delivered him a hard copy of the Fright Night script, and he read it and reread it and made notes about how he was going to do it before he came in. In other words, Mark Hamill had done a lot of work to play Peter Vincent.
Right.
And he was also echoing Roddy McDowall's performance. And Roddy was an extraordinary human being, actually. I mean, he's one of the kindest men I ever met. And he was great to work with when we shot it. When we shot Fright Night, I mean, in a way, he led the actors. He was a paternal presence, if you will. And he had done a movie that I'd written called Class of '84.
Yep, love that movie.
The teacher, and he brought me to tears in that scene where the juvenile delinquents killed. He was the biology teacher, and they killed all of his pet animals, his hamsters. And when he had that, finding them dead, killed by these kids, he made me cry. And
well, Tom, but you said also, I mean, with Rody and Chris, leading the actors, there was no divas. There was no, it's about me. It was all, this is for the movie, because that's what they were about.
That's awesome.
And that's what was, and plus we had 2 weeks rehearsal before we even shot a frame of film.
Oh, wow.
We all got to know each other, and do our biographies together and talk. And I think, Tom's mentioned that before, that the chance we got to hang out and have lunch together for 2 weeks,
Right.
it bonded the cast. And it's too bad they don't do that for every film, because it really made a difference.
Well, that's why 40 years later, the bonds of friendship that were formed during the rehearsals and during the shooting are still existent today.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely pick up on that. You definitely pick up on that. So
it's a lovely, lovely group of people. And when they came together for the original cast reading on the podcast, it was as great an experience as it was when we were shooting it.
That's awesome.
And I've done a number of movies, and television shows, and I've never had another experience like this. And
but it didn't start out that way. After the movie, we all went our own separate ways. And that was in 84, 85. And then
85.
Yeah, and I didn't really talk to any of the cast till early 2000s.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, and I mean, we didn't really, and then all of a sudden Bill Ragsdale calls me and he says, we're doing these conventions. I'm like, what do you mean convention? He goes, well, we go there and we meet the fans of Fright Night. I said, there's fans of Fright Night? And he said, yeah, and he says, yeah, you should come sometime. So I did. I went to one in Dallas. Well, at first I said to him, aren't these people weird? And he goes, no, they're really nice. And I said, oh, really? So
yeah,
I went.
They're both.
And they are, but they're weird nice.
Yes,
weirdly
yes.
nice.
I love talking to them, and I loved meeting them. And and ever since then, when I've been doing this show since early 2000s with the cast, and it's just I look forward to it. I love it.
Well, our show we say nostalgia is one hell of a drug sometimes, because there's something about this.
But there was no nostalgia when we were doing this.
No, there wasn't. And Tom, you had said in our previous interview, up until this point in the 80s, there was a lot of schlock. There was a lot of, mediocre. A presentation of the vampire genre was coming out, with the one with the tan guy. Love at first bite. Yeah. No offense, he's just like really tan, right? George Hamilton was very tan, I think.
Oh, leathery.
My line is when they start doing spoofs, it means the genre is exhausted.
Right.
Yeah.
And Fright Night, I was saying that Chris Sarandon's Jerry Dandridge really kind of ruined me for seeing Chris Sarandon after that, because I'd always idealized him as the coolest vampire on the block. And then I see him in Princess Bride playing this foppish, villainous prince who I just didn't want to look at him that way. But you're saying, Jonathan, you guys had like 2 weeks to prepare and hang out, basically. Your relationship, the Jerry Billy Cole relationship, is so good. Like everything.
Well, I think it's because I felt really comfortable with my first film, and Tom obviously made me feel very comfortable. But working with Chris, I never felt anything else than support from him.
Right.
And
good.
I just got to really get to know him, and I was shaking when I first met him, because one of my favorite films is Dog Day Afternoon.
Oh, yeah.
And if you ever see him play Leon, I went up to him and I said, I got to tell you this. I can't imagine that you're not that person. That's how good you are. No, he was so good in that. And right away, I knew I was in the presence of real genius. And I was just felt so comfortable.
So you did what I did with Chris Sarandon in Fright Night.
There you go.
But your first movie. And here we are 40 years later, practically,
First movie. And I was absolutely convinced I sucked, because,
what?
Well, here's the thing. I'm not going to go up to Tom. Tom's got a million other things to do. So Mavis, the script supervisor, was just a doll. And after every scene, I go, Mavis, was I okay? And she'd go, oh, you're wonderful. And I thought, yeah, you're just saying that. So when they had the actual screening at the Academy for cast and crew screening, I didn't just not go. I went to New York to get as far away from it as possible. And now I'm pissed that I didn't go to the screening.
Right. So you're saying you saw it at Beverly a couple months back for the first time in 40 years then?
Well, no, I'd seen it a couple of times on television.
First time on screen, I mean. First time on screen.
First thing on the big screen. Yeah, never seen it on the big screen ever.
And how'd you feel about you seeing yourself then?
I felt fine because I knew I was good at this point, but I was fine about it, you know. And the people that were there were, you know, of course, the melting scene. They're cheering and everything. It's like it was great. It was great.
Oh gosh, hold on. Here, have you seen this?
Oh, yes.
Oh, what is that?
This
And
is-
I want it.
That's the melting candle. And oh
God.
gosh, I forget the fellow's name who
Guy
made it.
Caldwell. Guy Caldwell.
Guy
and,
Caldwell. Thank you.
and if
Yeah,
you-
look at that.
Yes,
Look
and if
at
you
that.
go on
Oh
my
boy.
if you go on my fan page, Real Billy Cole on Facebook, there's a link to the I think it's called Superstition Candle Company, and
Okay.
he's making them and selling them at and they actually melt. When they melt red.
That's great.
Ah,
Dustin, you know, Christmas is coming up in a few months. Just
You
wanna-
already bought it as we're
Come on.
talking. What are you saying?
Yeah, literally on my phone right now.
Ding
What is
ding,
this?
Amazon, ding ding. What?
No,
No,
you know,
I'll get you that candle, but you already bought it.
I won't
And
buy
Guy-
it. I
and
won't
Guy-
buy it.
And Guy's he's really a really cool person. I don't get any money from it. I just he's trying to make a buck, and I like that he's working hard for it.
No, I love that. I mentioned The Warriors earlier as being one of my favorite movies, and there's a thing about these cult films, because Fright Night is a cult film. It has a following that is you know, the avid and loves it, you know, at the highest point that you could love a film, and I'm part of that. And I love the merchandise that comes out of it. You know, when I was a kid, I would wish I had my own set of Fright Night action figures to play with, you know, to recreate scenes, and maybe not some scenes, but you know, as a 10-year-old boy or whatever, I'm like, I'm not sure about the whole Amy scene with Jerry, but you know, I love that there's people still making these things now to this day.
Yeah.
well, they did. It's all been amazing. Jonathan just said he didn't even know there was a fan base building until like 2000, at least
Right.
15 years after the movie. I didn't know any of this was happening until Rob Galuzzo showed up at my door probably around 2000 to do the Psycho 2 documentary. And so somehow around the early 2000s, all of a sudden, nostalgia, I don't know what it was, but the fan base for a number of my movies anyway was growing and kept growing, but none of them have equaled the love that Fright Night had among the viewers. And it's because, like I said, it's passed down generation to generation because of the comedy in it.
Yeah.
Because what I did was, I thought it was an intrinsically funny idea. A mad horror fan insisting that his next door neighbor was a vampire. Who's going to believe that?
Right.
Nobody, except the vampire next door. You know, and I cast the actors that could do comedy or had a comedy bit, like Jonathan. Jonathan made up that cross moment with the police officer
With the whistling?
Yeah, which always gets a laugh. But he invented that. And Amy on the match cut, Amanda Burse, gets a laugh every time in the movie when she says, you know, he says it's a vamp. She says it's a vampire. I go from the mother not believing him to his girlfriend, Amy Peterson, not believing him. And Amanda gets a laugh every time. In other words, a lot of the people that I cast, I did it because they could improvise or give me a comedic sensibility. And you can say drama is hard, and that's true. But let me tell you, comedy is harder than anything.
Two things I love about going to the conventions is the fans. You know, you ask them, I always like to go, how many times have you seen the movie? You know, 5, 10, 25. Some people say 100 times.
Yeah.
100 times. And also what I love, that people come, it's a family thing. And the parents and the kids do horror stuff, and I love that they do stuff together like that. And I see a lot more than normal people with special needs. And I never quite understood why. And I asked somebody one time, he said, because nobody judges them here. Everybody's the same. And I thought, I love that.
Yeah, there's something beautiful about fandom when it comes, you know, I consider myself a uber nerd about a lot of things, and I love the inclusion that there is around these conventions, and it's a time when they get a weekend to really relish in what brings them joy. And maybe the rest of the year, they don't have that opportunity. And for them to geek out and not be judged for that. And, unfortunately, and I think your movie is different than this, Tom. In the 80s, there's a lot of judgment. There's a lot of picking on, a lot of teasing. There is teasing, obviously, when it comes to, Charlie and Ed, or Charlie more teasing Ed, but you handle the movie doesn't feel like it's not mean spirited. You know what I mean? Like no one feels like they're picking on anybody. It's I think that's another reason why this connects with so many people, because they don't feel like judged in any way.
Well, it's the scene where Jerry Dandridge in the alley when he's trapped Evil Ed.
Right.
She says, take my hand, and nobody will ever bully you anymore. And it's like that's echoed down through most of the gay community,
right?
All these decades, and it's just amazing. I had no idea that Stephen was gay when I cast him, but he was brilliant in the part.
Hey Tom, I have a question for you. I was just thinking, of all the characters in Fright Night, which one do you relate to most?
Thanks, Jonathan.
It just occurred to me. It
was my love letter to my growing up and being a horror fan back in the day when there were very, very few horror fans.
You're saying Charlie then? Charlie would be
Charlie was me. Yeah. And I thought, well, what would I love to have happen? And I came up with it because of Cloak and Dagger, which was really Rear Window. It was a juvenile version of Rear Window. And I said, if you really want to do this, I told this to Universal, what you should do, because it's a Boy Who Cried Wolf story, but to give it a freshness, you should make it a horror fan becoming convinced that his next door neighbor was a vampire.
Right.
And Universal threw me out of the office. So I came up with Jack Black instead. But the idea of a horror fan becoming convinced about the next door neighbor being a vampire wouldn't leave my head, because I was in love with the concept and I didn't have a story. And I kept saying, well, what would I do? What would I do? And when I was growing up, at that age, going back to about 1960, they had the Friday night frights,
right,
on some local TV channel at 11 o'clock, and it was the only way you could see a horror movie on TV. And they were all AIP or Hammer films. They were, it was Christopher Lee doing Dracula.
Yeah.
And I said, and they always had a horror host, and the horror hosts were wonderfully funny and about as dumb and tacky as you could get, and corny. They were like Elvira and Stagger Lee and
Zachary or Zachary.
Yeah, Zachary, and the sets were always like for $1.95. They were paper mache, and they had one guy blowing out fog from a fog machine, and it would get on camera, and you'd see it at the bottom. It was that kind of thing.
We had Prince Mordecai in Erie, Pennsylvania.
I was going to ask, Prince Mordecai.
He was an overweight vampire.
Yeah.
I thought blood was thinning, but
I did a soap opera at ABC back in my acting days. I was a soap opera star, and upstairs they started. Dan Curtis.
Dark Shadows.
Dark Shadows.
Yeah.
And I should have figured it out. That was like 1963 or 4. And Dark Shadows became a hit.
Right.
It's a soap opera. And last weekend, I think they had a convention for Dark Shadows.
Really?
And everybody, yeah. I didn't know that they were still doing it, because Jonathan Fridd is no longer with us, who was really the lead. And but I mean, anyway, for whatever reason, nostalgia, I guess you could say, but the '80s have really carried over right up until now. The movies, the content, you know.
Right. This
Yeah.
is now whereas back in the day it was the 50s were very nostalgic in the 80s, right? So it's all kind of coming around. I wonder.
Well, I don't remember any nostalgia at all in the '80s.
So
Jonathan, do you?
I wonder though, my question about that, Tom, is like Amy's seems like she's dressed like a 50s kind of bebop, very Grease inspired outfit throughout the whole thing. And there feels like there's like a 50s kind of vibe. The song that Charlie's listening to in his car when he pulls up to his house is like a bebop, a loobop kind of, rock song. And
a public domain song. It really is what it is. It's
yeah, totally.
Sure, you didn't have to pay for it.
Oh boy, I can't. That was done by David Shackler, was the music supervisor, who unfortunately is no longer with us. And I thought it was a brilliant needle drop score. And most of those were original songs that were written for the movie to reflect the themes and the scenes in the movies.
Right. We just on our last episode with Jack Daniel, we talked about the soundtrack specifically and how that song by Sparks really stands out to us. The Armies of the Night. That's the song that's playing right when Charlie and Amy are going into the club. And how much there are certain songs in the movie that without those songs, the scene is not the same, especially the dance club scenes. And I want to be mindful of everyone's time because we're starting to wrap up, but I got to ask this question, Tom, and Jonathan, before we jumped on, he kind of briefly mentioned it, and we talked about it, Dustin, you and I, with Jack. So in regards to Billy Cole's character,
Tom just mentioned this to me. We were talking last week.
Yeah.
And he now has a definitive answer because of the books he's writing after.
Yeah, I've got Fright Night books. The first one's already on Amazon, Fright Night Origins, Fright Night Aftermath. The next book drops within the next month or 6 weeks. And what I did, it starts immediately after the end of the movie. But that didn't give me enough background of the actors. So I wrote a novel called Fright Night Resurrection, which we're going to try to do on table reads to follow Fright Night, the original cast reading.
Cool.
And that's
excellent.
That's a novel, and it explains who Billy Cole is and his background, and I dramatize it. And in that, because Billy Cole dissolves, and at the end when he's staked to the heart, you see the dust coming out, of his pant legs and out of his cuffs. I made him a golem. Ordinarily, they would say that he's just a ghoul, but I wanted an explanation that justified his melting.
A golem.
And so in Fright Night Resurrection, but I explained it dramatically how it happened and how his relationship with Jerry Dandridge, whose name back then around 556 AD was Geralt. I explained how it happened in Fright Night Resurrection, which follows Fright Night, the original cast reading. And if I have the time and can keep getting them out, I'm going to write 2 storylines. One, the novels, the Fright Night novels you can buy on Amazon, which starts right at the end of the movie. And the other one, 30 years later, which is Fright Night Resurrection, where I bring back the cast members so they can play their age as they are now.
Amazing.
But it also explains a lot of it, and I introduced new characters.
And don't you have another one in the works called Fright Night Billy's Bones?
Yes, and I have Fright Night Evil Ed.
So we'll see what.
Oh my gosh!
All I need is the time, fellas, to keep writing.
Oh, this is fantastic.
So that's it, everybody who's watching this. No more discussion. You know what Billy Cole is. Stop asking.
He's not human.
Yeah. And tomorrow, Tuesday, Act 3 of Fright Night, the table read drops. Please listen to all 3 of them together.
Yeah, we're gonna make sure like all the links are in the show notes and links to your website. And Jonathan, we'll make sure that the Facebook link to your fan page is on there too.
Okay.
And I mean, look, this movie has stayed the test of time. There's when you mentioned the whistling with the cross, Tom and Billy Jonathan, you reenacted that. There's a really funny moment in the first episode of the table read when Chris Sarandon's trying to whistle Strangers in the
they
Night.
can't whistle.
So it goes back to what Dustin, you were saying earlier. Like, it's great that you left all these flubs in because it really makes you feel like you're in the room with everybody.
Well, that's because of the guys who run Chapery. That's Jack Levy and Mark Nell. And it
was a great energy in the room,
yes,
and I'm glad it came through on the. I haven't heard the reading yet, but I'm glad it came through.
It's great.
Oh well, it does, Jonathan. I mean, those moments when the cast broke up, Amanda Burse is the one who ended up whistling "Stranger in the Dark."
Yeah, it is.
Sarandon couldn't do it again.
I know, and at the very end, after I said, "Tom, do you want?" I don't know if that's in there. I said, "Tom, do you want me to make the melting sound?" He said, "Oh yeah." So I'm like, "Well, I'll do it when everybody leaves." Everybody's like, "No, we want to be here."
Yeah. Tom, does anyone ever ask you about the movie Josie's Castle with George Takei that you did back in the day?
No. You're like nobody ever asked me about Fatal Beauty, the Whoopi Goldberg movie that I directed.
I love that movie, Fatal Beauty. And if people haven't seen Fatal Beauty, Sam Elliott is in it, looking hunky as ever. Probably the hunkiest dude on the planet. And Whoopi Goldberg, one of her best roles, by the way. Fatal Beauty is excellent.
It's out of the genre, and everybody thinks of me as horror. So I think that so people don't ask about Fatal Beauty. But, yes, I thought it was a very good movie. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Jonathan, have you seen Fatal Beauty?
I have not. But now it's on my list a lot. What was
the other
movie?
Want to watch it together?
What was the first movie?
Josie's Castle.
Oh, I've got to watch that.
George Takei. Josie's Castle.
I was the star along with George Takei.
Oh, I'm writing that down.
Who was complaining about Captain Kirk even back then?
Outstanding.
He's been complaining forever about that. So.
Oh boy.
No, Fatal Beauty is it came out at a time when Beverly Hills Cop had come out already, and it's not the same at all. But I think but there was like an energy about it where it's like this badass cop, or like someone who kind of breaks the rules a little bit, right?
Well, that part was written for Cher.
It was written for Cher?
Yes, that's the truth of it was I got into it when it was Sam Elliott and Cher starring together, and it was a part of what the genre they called guns and garter belts back then.
Yeah, guns and nice.
And then Cher, very smartly, dropped out and went off to make the comedy Dreamscape, Moonscape. Moonstruck. Yes. And Alan Laddie, who was head of MGM at the time, called me up and said, "What about Whoopi Goldberg?" And I at first was shocked because I thought of Whoopi as only doing comedy,
right?
And he said, "Well," I said, "This is not a script a movie that has an intrinsic comedy in it. It's a revenge movie about drugs." And Laddie said she'll make it fun. Well, in some ways, yes. In some ways, no.
Right.
So it came out, and all the reviewers wanted to see Whoopi Goldberg doing
Jumpin' Jack Flash or something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And that wasn't the movie. It didn't really make any money, but it seems to. I always thought I thought it was a terrific movie.
I agree, and I love that you made it, there's like a romantic tension between her and Sam Elliott, which is great. And Ruben Blades is in it, and love Ruben Blades. Anyways, everyone listening and watching, go check out Fatal Beauty as well. Put that on your Tom Holland watch list.
Yeah,
mine is Josie's Castle.
I knew it would be. I knew I was going to elicit something out of you guys. As we wrap up really quick, it's only getting closer to the fall and only getting closer to Halloween with a Fright Night Cast reunion later on in the year.
That's going to be, so that's, what is it, October 18th or something. It's Scarefest weekend in Lexington, Kentucky.
Yep.
We'll all
That's
be there,
right.
everybody.
That's right.
And almost, I don't think we've all ever been together because we did
I'm
one with
coming.
Dorothy.
I'm coming.
Awesome.
Yeah, we did one with Dorothy, no Tom, and we've done one with Tom before we actually could find Dorothy. So I think this is the first time with everybody.
Yeah,
Amazing.
and really quickly, I also want to say it's so wonderful hearing Dorothy on this podcast,
Yeah.
reprising
Isn't she
her
good?
role.
Isn't she good?
She is
Right.
like, everybody is great. It's sincerely, everybody go out and
Did you-
listen to it.
Did you notice how Amanda Burst got younger as she went along?
Yeah.
Oh
'cause-
yeah, she got into
Yeah.
Amy and got younger and younger.
She and
younger.
Charlie.
You know, with Dorothy,
Yeah.
we had lost Dorothy. Nobody could find her. And I started going online and doing an investigation. I finally, after days, I found some name that was her son. And her son was great. And he said, yeah, here's her number, call her. So I called her. She was thrilled
Oh,
to be part
wow.
of this.
She looks like she hasn't aged a day
She
too,
looks
by the way.
great. She looks
Like I
fantastic.
was looking at the cast photo of your reunion. Everybody looks fantastic. And yeah, when Amy says the line, Charlie, I'm ready, that is what gets a laugh out of me every single time. Because Charlie's like, yeah, whatever. And so watching that with my brother, who's 5 years older than me, he looked over at me and he goes, I would never do that. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, you'll find out.
Do you know what Dorothy told me that the Valium line was hers. She just threw it in there. It was not. And that is the great thing about Tom as a director. He let us try things,
Great line.
Uh,
Great line. Well, and your whole like delivery of "Hey kid," that jump scare is so
Yeah.
fantastic, right? And then Dustin and I both were like, "You don't go peeking over at somebody's house, you just don't do that." So your reactions were totally warranted.
Well, I have to tell you, Tom told me exactly what I was supposed to do. I knew how to do it because I watched plenty of horror films, so I knew shock value. But Tom's like, no, go in there, just jump in there and say it.
Hey kid, what you doing?
I love it. I love it.
Hey, thank you so
Boys,
much.
yeah, thank you, guys.
Thank you
Justin and
both, gentlemen.
My
Zach.
pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
Jonathan, thank you.
As always, I will see you in 2 weeks.
And listen to Fright Night, the original cast rating on Table Read.
Thank you so much.
You. God bless
Take care,
everybody.
guys.
Thank
Happy
you.
July
Bye,
4th.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.